I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, peeling back the layers of what I thought was my life with Sarah. We'd been together for almost 8 years, and honestly I thought we had something solid. She was the kind of girl who could be bitchy and manipulative, but I always believed she loved me, or at least I thought so. We had our ups and downs, but the last few months, I started noticing small things that just didn't sit right with me. It started with her being unusually secretive about her phone. She'd always been pretty private, but suddenly she'd hide her screen when I walked into the room, or she'd get defensive if I asked to see her messages. At first, I brushed it off as just her being annoyed or paranoid, but deep down, I knew she was hiding something. Then there were her late nights at work or girls' dinners, which I initially believed, but eventually I started catching her in little lies. She'd say she was at a friend's house. Then I'd find out she'd been out with her best friend, Lisa, and her guy, Mark, more often than she admitted. The real tipping point was about 2 months ago. I noticed she was constantly tired, her mood swings got worse, and she started wearing more makeup, stuff she never really did before. One night I was lying in bed, trying to get to sleep, and she suddenly got up and left the bedroom quietly. I was half asleep when I heard the faint sound of her unlocking her phone. I felt a weird gut instinct, so I rolled over and peeked at her screen while she was in the bathroom. That's when I saw the texts. They were from Mark, her best friend's boyfriend, and they were suggestive, flirty, and downright inappropriate. He kept calling her sexy and telling her she was hotter than ever, and she was replying with "can't wait to see you" and "wish you were here." I froze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. I stared at those messages for a second, then I slowly sat up in bed, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. That night I stayed awake for hours, mind racing. I couldn't believe Sarah, who always prided herself on being faithful, was cheating on me with my best friend, Jason. The worst part was that she told me she was pregnant about a month ago. She sat me down, tears in her eyes, acting all innocent, saying she was sorry and that she loved me but that she'd been feeling overwhelmed and that the pregnancy was a surprise. She begged me to stay to help her, to be a real man, as she put it. I remember feeling a mix of heartbreak and rage, heartbreak because I loved her, and rage because I felt so betrayed. I confronted her the next day, armed with that phone screenshot. Her reaction was surreal. She looked at me like I was the crazy one, denied everything, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things. She told me I was overreacting, that Mark was just a friend, and that I wasn't being fair to her. She kept lying, spinning stories about her late nights, about how she was just trying to get her life together, but I knew better. That night, I realized that I was living with someone who could lie so easily, who could cheat on me and then try to gaslight me into believing I was the one at fault. It cut deep, more than I can put into words. Now I'm sitting here trying to process everything. I feel angry, hurt, confused, a mess of emotions I haven't fully sorted out. But I know one thing for sure, I can't trust her anymore. I don't know what I want to do next, but I do know I need to figure out whether I can survive this betrayal or if I should just cut my losses and walk away. Still, that night with the texts replayed in my head every time I close my eyes. It's like my whole world has been turned upside down, and I'm just trying to hold on. After I saw those messages, everything changed. I honestly felt like I was walking around in a fog for a couple of days. It was like my mind kept replaying that moment over and over, the betrayal, the lies, the fact that my best friend was involved in this mess. I couldn't believe I'd been blind for so long. How did I miss all the signs? How did she manage to hide it so well? It felt like my whole life, everything I thought was real, was crumbling beneath me. I needed to get some clarity, so I started digging into her phone more. I didn't have a plan at first. I was just desperate to understand what I was dealing with. I found more texts, some from Mark that were even more explicit, talking about meeting up, about completing the night, and how they couldn't keep lying anymore. I found pictures she sent him, her in bed, topless, her making out with him in some hotel room. My stomach turned. I felt sick just thinking about it. The worst part was knowing she'd been sneaking out after telling me she was sleeping or working late. She'd been lying to my face and I had no idea. That's when I decided I couldn't keep quiet. I needed to confront her again, face to face this time, and demand answers. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling, holding her phone. When she finally came home that night, I was ready. I told her I knew everything, that I'd seen the messages, the photos. Everything. Her reaction was instant. She got defensive, started spitting out lies like she was trying to convince herself that she wasn't guilty. She said it was just sex, that it was a one-time mistake, that it didn't mean anything. She even had the nerve to say I was overreacting, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But her words felt hollow. I looked into her eyes and saw the truth there. She knew she'd messed up big time. She kept saying she loved me, that it was just a fling, that Mark was just a guy she was bored with, but I knew better. I was furious and heartbroken at the same time. I kept asking her why, how she could do this to me, to us, after everything we'd built. She shrugged, acting bitchy, like I was the one making a fuss over nothing. She told me I should be grateful she told me at all, and she started throwing her own accusations, saying I was neglecting her, that I didn't pay enough attention, that I was just jealous. I was so pissed I could barely speak. I told her I never, ever wanted to hear her excuses again, that I didn't believe a word she said. I wanted her out of the house, but she kept pleading, crying, trying to manipulate me. That's when it hit me. She's good at lying, good at making herself look innocent even when she's caught red-handed. I felt this crushing sense of betrayal, not just because she cheated, but because she lied so effortlessly, so convincingly. It's like she's been living a double life, and I was just the fool who didn't see it coming. I was a mess after that, anger, sadness, confusion all at once. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. The trust I once had in her was shattered into pieces. Every memory, every moment we shared suddenly felt tainted by her lies. I wanted to believe that maybe it was a mistake, that she'd come clean and we could fix this, but deep down, I knew that trust was gone for good. She had crossed a line I could never come back from, and the pain just kept growing. I didn't sleep much those nights, just replaying everything, trying to understand how I was going to get through it. The days that followed were a blur. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, feeling numb most of the time. Every time I saw her, I could tell she was trying to act like everything was normal, like the lies she told me, that she was sorry, that she loved me, that it was just a mistake. Somehow we're going to fix everything. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The trust was gone, and I could see through her forced apologies. She kept insisting it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything, that she was bored and stupid. She kept crying, trying to get me to forgive her, but I felt like a fool. How could I forgive her after she had been sneaking around in our own house, behind my back with my best friend? Honestly, I didn't know what to do. I kept asking myself if I should just rip the Band-Aid off and walk away, or try to salvage what little was left. But every time I thought about it, I remembered the good times, the plans we'd made. I remembered her smile, how she used to look at me like I was the only guy in the world. That made it even harder. I felt so stupid for trusting someone who could lie and cheat like this. It's like I'd been played from the beginning and I never saw it coming. One night, I decided I needed to find out exactly how deep this went. I started snooping again, going through her social media, digging through her photos and messages. That's when I discovered something even worse. I found out she'd been seeing Mark for months. Not just a drunken fling or a quick hookup, but a full-on affair. She'd been sneaking out after I went to bed, meeting him in secret, sometimes in our house, sometimes in hotels, always lying about where she was. There were pictures of her and Mark together, hands intertwined, kissing, lying in bed together. It hit me like a punch in the gut. She'd been lying to me while she was probably thinking about him, planning their next meetup. That was the point I snapped. I knew I had to do something fast. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not anymore. I wanted to confront her again, but this time I was ready with a plan. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. I started to consider my options. Should I kick her out? Should I keep her around and try to work things out? Or should I do something more calculated? I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. and I knew that if I didn't act now, I'd lose whatever shred of dignity I had left. I decided I was going to make her regret this. I stayed up late that night, planning my next move. I knew I had to catch her in the act, or at least expose her for what she was. I wanted her to see that I had all the evidence, that I wasn't going to be gaslit or manipulated anymore. I wasn't just some pawn in her game. I needed her to understand that the trust was broken, that I was done forgiving her lies. That's when I started thinking about revenge, not from a malicious place, but as a way to regain control, to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. The next day, I bought a small voice recorder just to see if I could catch her lying again. I wasn't sure I'd go through with anything more than that, but I needed to be sure. I also started contacting some of her friends, trying to find out if she'd been acting differently around them, if they knew anything. It was all about gathering evidence, proof that she'd been cheating on me for months, that she'd been lying to my face, and that she'd been sneaking around in our own house under my nose. I felt a strange mixture of determination and heartbreak. I was angry, but I also felt this strange sense of clarity that I hadn't felt before, like I was finally waking up from a nightmare I'd been living in for too long. That evening, I put my plan into motion. I knew she'd be home around 8 p.m., and I had the recorder hidden in my pocket. I told myself I wasn't going to do anything drastic, just gather the evidence, see what she said when she thought I wasn't paying attention. But deep down, I knew this was about more than just catching her lying again. It was about finally exposing her for what she truly was, about confronting her with everything I had found out and making her face the consequences. She came home looking tense, her eyes darting around as if she was expecting me to ask her something. She immediately tried to act normal, cooking, cleaning, pretending nothing was wrong. I sat on the couch, playing it cool, while I kept my hand in my pocket holding the recorder. I watched her, waiting for the right moment. When she sat down next to me, I decided to push her a little, just enough to get her to slip up. "Hey, Sarah," I started casually. "I've been thinking about everything lately, about us, about the baby." She froze for a second, then tried to brush it off, acting like she didn't even want to talk about it. I pressed on. "You know I love you, but I can't keep pretending I don't know what's been going on. I saw the messages, the pictures, you and Mark. How long has this been going on?" She looked at me with that bitchy smirk she always had when she was trying to hide her guilt. "It's none of your business," she snapped. "You're just overreacting. I told you it was just sex. It didn't mean anything. I was lonely and Mark was there for me. That's all it was." I kept recording, watching her lie. She kept twisting the story, saying that I was paranoid, that I was jealous, that she loved me and only me. But her voice cracked when she said it, and I knew she was lying. I could hear the guilt and the panic behind her words. That's when I decided I'd heard enough. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the recorder and pressed play, letting her hear her own voice. The look on her face was priceless, like she'd been caught in her own web of lies. She tried to deny, to spin more stories, but I just kept showing her the evidence I'd gathered, the messages, the pictures. Her face turned beet red and she started to scream, calling me crazy, accusing me of spying on her, saying I was ruining our marriage over some stupid mistake. But I didn't care anymore. As she yelled, I just sat there, feeling a strange mix of relief and rage. I finally had proof, hard proof, that she'd been unfaithful, that she'd been sneaking around in our house and lying to my face. I felt the first flicker of power I'd had in months, and it made me want to confront her even more. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about her trying to manipulate me, trying to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. I realized that I couldn't just sweep this under the rug or pretend it didn't happen. She needed to face the reality of what she did. The confrontation escalated quickly. She started crying, begging me to forgive her, saying she was sorry, that she'd never do it again. But I knew better. I looked at her straight in the eyes and told her I couldn't trust her anymore, that she had broken everything between us. I told her her lies had destroyed the one thing I thought was unbreakable, my trust. I told her I was done, that I was going to leave, and that she needed to pack her stuff. The look on her face was a mix of rage and despair. She knew she'd lost control, and that I finally had the upper hand. That night, as she packed her bags, I felt a strange sense of catharsis. I still hurt, but I also felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I was done playing her game. The betrayal was real, but so was my resolve. I told her to leave and never come back. I knew I'd be better off without her deception hanging over my head. It was the end of a chapter, and I had no idea what the future held, but I knew it had to be better than this life-filled nightmare I'd been living in. The days after she left felt like a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I was finally free from her constant manipulations and lies, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I kept replaying everything: the betrayal, the lies, the fact that my best friend, Mark, had been involved in this whole mess. It felt like my life had been completely turned upside down, and I was just trying to hold on to whatever was left of my sanity. I spent a lot of time alone, thinking about what I wanted next. Part of me wanted to go full revenge mode and make her suffer the way she made me suffer, but another part knew that I needed to focus on healing myself first. I realized I'd been so caught up in her lies that I hadn't even stopped to think about what I truly wanted. I was hurt, yes, but I also knew I deserved better. I deserved honesty, respect, and someone who wouldn't betray me in the worst way possible. One night I finally reached out to my brother, Jake. I needed someone who could give me real advice, someone outside of this mess. I told him everything from the initial signs to the final confrontation. He was furious, especially about Mark. "You've got to cut these people out of your life," he said. "They're not worth your pain, you're better than that." His words hit me hard. I'd been so busy trying to figure out what to do that I hadn't considered just walking away from it all completely. I decided I was going to move out and change my environment. I couldn't keep living in the same space where all this happened. I found a small apartment nearby and I started packing up my things. It was tough packing away memories I'd shared with Sarah, the photos, the little mementos, everything that reminded me of better times. But I knew I had to do it. I had to erase that chapter of my life to move forward. While I was packing, I found myself thinking about the mistakes I'd made, trusting too easily, ignoring the signs, believing that someone like Sarah could be faithful. But I also realized that I was a victim here too. I trusted her because I loved her, and love makes you blind sometimes. Now I was learning that love isn't enough if it's not mutual and honest. I promised myself I'd never fall for the same trap again. I'd be more careful, more cautious about who I let into my life. The final act of that chapter was telling her to stay gone. I sent her a message that night, just saying I never wanted to see her again and that I was done. I didn't want her dragging me back into that chaos. I felt a strange sense of closure, even if the pain still lingered. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was finally starting to accept that some things can't be fixed, and that's okay. I learned that I was stronger than I thought, and I deserved better than someone who would lie and cheat in my own house, with my best friend, and then deny everything. It's a painful lesson, but one I'll carry with me. Looking back now, I realize that this whole ordeal has changed me in ways I never expected. The pain, the anger, the betrayal, it all felt unbearable at first. I thought I'd drown in it, that I'd never recover from the shock of her lying and sleeping with Mark behind my back. But somehow I found a way through it. I learned that even when everything feels broken, you can rebuild, if you're willing to face the truth and accept what's real. Living without her now, I've come to see things more clearly. I see how she manipulated my trust, how she used my love against me to cover her own lies. But I also see my strength in finally standing up for myself, in putting an end to her deception. I won't lie, there's still a part of me that feels the sting of betrayal every day. It's a wound that may never fully heal, but I refuse to let it define me. Instead, I see it as a lesson, one that taught me to be more cautious, more aware, and most importantly, to value myself more. I've started focusing on myself, my career, my friends, my hobbies. I'm trying to rebuild my confidence and remember what it's like to be genuinely happy without all the chaos. It's not easy, and the scars of what happened will stay with me for a while. But I know I'll come out of this stronger, more cautious, and more resilient. This betrayal has stripped away the illusions I held about love and trust, but it's also shown me that I can survive the worst and come out on the other side. One thing I want to say to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar: trust your gut. Don't ignore the small signs and don't be afraid to confront the truth, no matter how painful it is. It's better to face the reality than live in denial. And if someone betrays you, whether it's your partner, a friend, or anyone, you have the right to walk away to protect yourself. Don't let guilt or fear keep you in a situation that's only going to hurt you more. I've learned that true strength comes from knowing when to let go, from standing up for yourself, from recognizing your worth even when someone else tries to tell you otherwise. I've still got a long road ahead, but I'm finally moving in the right direction. And I know deep down that I'll be okay. Better than okay. Because I've faced my pain, accepted it, and chosen myself over the lies. That's something nobody can take away from me.